KDKR, Decatur, Dallas, Fort Worth, and KYJC Commerce.
Portions of KDKR's daily programming do not necessarily reflect the views of the management or staff.
Prudent Money with Bob Brooks is sponsored by the Prudent Money Foundation on 91.3.
Well, your questions and my answers. Today we're going to take a look. Stay tuned for Prudent Money. This is Bob Brooks, and you are listening to the Prudent Money Radio Show. Thank you so much for joining me today. You know I do appreciate it. 1-877-913-5357. 1-877-913-5357. You can also go to the website at www.prudentmoney.com. Send the question into the Ask Bob section, and I will get it taken care of for you. That's off the website, www.prudentmoney.com. 1-877-913-5357. Well, typically, when the stock market is closed, which is very few days out of the year, we take the day off, play a best of, and then get ready for the next day. Today, been in the office, and we are live today on the program. So any questions that you might have, I'm going to be catching up on some questions that just kind of update you on where we are with some situations as far as the economy goes, with the stock markets and such. And we're going to start off with one of the things I've been seeing quite a bit in the media has to do with this. Bear markets are not so bad. They're volatile. Instead of saying they lose money, they say they're volatile. And they're not so bad, and the average bear market has a loss of 29 to 30%. And I've seen various numbers. It just comes down to what they include and how long they go back and that kind of thing. The average length of a bear market is 12 months. I believe that's what most of your articles will say. Pop culture finance, of course. One of the things that I'm going to be talking about in the webinar on Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday is this very subject of really what is a bear market? What is a decline in the stock market of any substance? And as pop culture finance has you focusing in on this average bear market, I'm going to focus you in on 5 things that you need to know about bear markets. And you're going to look at bear markets a lot different. Did you know that it may not be a bear market? It may just be a correction. But the problem is we're way past that stage. Not way past it, but I think we're past it enough to where we can mark that one not on the list. The second is a crash. And what most people don't realize is that within a crash of the stock market, which we saw during COVID, we came right back and everything was fine within about 4 or 5 months. That's one of the good things, believe it or not, about a crash. It's assuming that a crash doesn't turn into a bear market. The third is the average bear market. The fourth is what I call the 3-phase bear market, which is a longer, bigger loss bear market. And then there is the big one, what I call the super cycle bear market. And I came up with this, which I'm going to go through in detail. And by the way, when I say go through in detail, it's going to be very easy for you to understand. You've got my word on it. And I went back and I looked through old webinars we've done, and I thought to myself, how did anybody understand any of this that I was talking about? Even with pictures, it was getting a little complicated. This is going to be so very easy because I want you to be able to ask one question and answer one question by the time it's all over with. I want you to ask, how much risk am I really taking And number two, am I comfortable with it? You see, when it comes right down to it, that's the only thing that matters, is how much risk because risk drives everything. This is what pop culture finance does not teach, is that risk determines and defines everything that we do, how much risk that we're taking. And I'm going to show you how to find that out. And then then we're going to answer the question, are you okay with that? You at peace with that? Can you pray about it and God give you a sense of peace about it? So we'll be talking about this. So don't get lost in the average, because if you were looking at this and you said, well, the average bear market only goes down about 30%. Well, we're just about 8% away from that point. So this should be over in no time. I don't think it's going to be that easy. Could be that easy, but I don't think it's going to be that easy. 1-877-913-5357. Another question that I get is about the potential of a recession. And Janet Yellen, who is our Treasury Secretary, and of course, you gotta believe that a politician such as Janet Yellen is going to toe the company line. She says that a recession is just not inevitable. We could dodge a recession. We could have what they call a soft landing. Well, I would suggest that she take a step. Well, she is a brilliant lady and deserves the chair of Treasury Secretary, I'm sure. Secretary of Treasury, I'm sure she does. If we could get a off the record answer to that question about a recession, I think she would speak differently. Then the other one is, we'll go into a recession, but it'll probably be next year. Well, I personally can't see how we're going to get to the end of the year without being in a recession if we already are in a recession. You're seeing the impacts and feeling the impacts of inflation that the government calls 8.5%. I call it more 20 to 25%. If you count those two main ingredients, which they quote inflation without, which is food and energy, then I get why they do it. Don't get me wrong. I do get why they do it. They want to see where core inflation is moving. And it's not going to move as much. It's a little bit brighter, happier part of inflation to look at. Food and energy, I don't know about you, but I spend it at the grocery store, and you feel it at the pain at the pump. By the way, Tony Joe, our automotive genius, will be in on Friday during his regular time. And this Friday, we are going to talk about and take a close look at how to save money on gas. President Biden is considering an 18.5 cents reduction through a gas tax holiday. I'll take that 18 cents, but I don't know. Maybe that's only about $3 or $4, right? Something like that. I think it's going to take a little bit more. How about getting our domestic drilling going again? How about that one in fact, do you know, if he completely reversed course, just the thought of that, the supply and demand of that would make the cost of oil, I bet it would crater, bringing gas down dramatically. But anyway, I got off course there. Inflation. This war in the Ukraine and Russia that we don't hear that much about anymore. We hear a little bit here and there. Cannot imagine what's going on in the Ukraine on a day-to-day basis. But like I said, we don't hear that much about it. is still impacting in many, many different ways. And obviously, Putin's not going to give up. And so that continues to be a problem, especially a problem if we get dragged into it. Or over in China, there's a lot of geopolitical hotspots right now. And then this supply chain issue, which is still ongoing, which I don't quite understand how we can't fix that, which leads to the inflation situation, the socialist agenda, midterm elections, interest rates going up. And we're going to talk a little bit about that in terms of the real estate markets, which is another question that I'm getting quite a bit. But interest rates are a problem. You probably don't watch the markets this close, but I'll tell you, when you see interest rates go up in a big way during the day, you see the market take a tumble. Because the market knows that there's a lot of problems with interest rates, and the Federal Reserve Board has to be aggressive about it, even though I don't think it's necessarily rising interest rates that's going to cause inflation to come down. I think the toll that it's going to take on our economy, the toll it's going to take on the markets, both stock market and bond markets, is going to bring inflation down. But it's funny. I probably see it a little bit more than most people, just because I study it and I'm in this business. But a lot of the optical illusions they're trying to create, that because we're doing this, it's going to create this, is so far-fetched. It's just absolutely unbelievable. There's so much more to the other story. But cutting back on trips, cutting back on spending, and a Congress and a White House who aren't doing anything, what could go wrong? That long list, yeah, I think that we're in a recession. And I think it will show up this next quarter. Hey, this is Bob Brooks, 1-877-913-5357. Up against the break. Stick around. I'll be right back.
The Word for Today is excited to announce the new official online home for the ministry of Pastor Chuck Smith and K. Smith, pastorchuck.org. At pastorchuck.org, you'll have instant access to thousands of hours of verse-by-verse teaching by Pastor Chuck Smith from Genesis through Revelation, and full access to special messages on subjects such as prophecy and much, much more. Also at pastorchuck.org, a full library of great teachings by K. Smith, and a section where you can read some of Pastor Chuck's books online, all free of charge. So visit the new official online home of the Word for Today and the ministry of Pastor Chuck and K. Smith, pastorchuck.org.
Hi, this is Bob Brooks, host of the Prudent Money Radio Show. Well, the stock market is in a confirmed bear market. What do you need to know? Well, first, you need to know how bear markets really work. Second, an investment that has consistently made money in past bear markets. And third, what steps to take today. In a 30-minute webinar presentation, I will take the complicated study of bear markets and make it relatable so anyone can understand. I'll be presenting this webinar 3 times the week of June 20th. This will give us just the right amount of time to learn what you need to know. Plus, we'll be doing a live Q&A at the end. Stay off of the investment roller coaster because you don't need to lose money in a bear market. To sign up, go to prudentmoney.com for more information.
In 1 Corinthians, Paul reminds us to run the race of life to win the prize. Join me, Dr. Erwin Lutzer, for Running to Win. Be strengthened to finish your race with confidence.
Listen daily, 8 a.m. on Bible School Radio 91.3.
A wicked king who worshipped idols and rebelled from God received a mysterious message written on a wall by a disembodied hand. No, not a sci-fi movie. It's in the book of Daniel. And Pastor Greg Laurie helps us study that dramatic moment this week on A New Beginning. Be sure to tune in.
Weekday mornings at 7:30 on 91.3 KDKR.
Welcome back. This is Bob Brooks, and you are listening to the Prudent Money Radio Show. 1-877-913-5357. Well, if you're listening to the podcast, which a lot of people do, I really apologize for the spots there. The break that we take between the first half and the second half of the show. We don't have a great internet connection, so the feed that comes in, from what I can tell, the feed that comes in from the radio station is very staticky. So not the most pleasant sounds. So I appreciate you sticking through with it and sticking around for the second half of the program. 1-877-913-5357. And my assumption is radio is not hearing that. So I certainly hope not. 1-877-913-5357. Let's talk a little bit about the real estate markets. Of course, anytime that I have somebody on. Yeah, that Chris just sent me a text that we have been having internet issues all day. Chris, I just hate those days, that you have anytime we have internet days like that, because there just seems like there's nothing you can do about it. But KVTT, KVTT was the old radio station I was on. KDKR does a great job at getting these things worked out and fixed and putting on great Christian programming. 1-877-913-5357. Let's talk a little bit about the real estate markets because, as you know, real estate markets have been on fire. We've had the endless debate over the past year as to whether or not real estate markets are in a bubble. And, I mean, let's face it, every time the minute a home goes in the market, it gets sold. We're talking 50 to 75, maybe 100 offers. People paying more than the asking price of the listing price of the home. And so I look at it as, I mean, you can call it whatever you want, a hot real estate market, a normal real estate market. I still call it a market that's in a real estate bubble because based on my studies of how investment bubbles work, this certainly does have enough characteristics to be classified as one. So now, having said that, a real estate market or a stock market or a bond market, which all three of those, I classify those in a bubble, they tend to have bad endings. Here's what I see for the real estate markets, because there still is a true supply and demand issue. But I think what ends up putting a real damper on the party, and it comes down to interest rates, mortgage rates. They've been definitely going up along with interest rates. So once again, I'm going to go through this because I think it's important for you to understand. The Federal Reserve Board sets the benchmark for interest rates by raising and lowering what's called the federal funds rate. And then investment money managers, traders, hedge fund managers, whoever's in the business, watches the interest rate that's being offered from the 10-year Treasury bond. So as all that goes up, that tends to affect mortgage rates going up as well. And so I'll throw this out there. It's a little bit complicated, but I'll just give you an idea of what's going on with interest rates. The European Central Bank, ECB, does the same thing pretty much that the Federal Reserve Board does here in the United States. The ECB oversees a European bond market, which I don't know how big it is, but it's huge, lots of debt. A bond is really just another word for debt. Just like the Federal Reserve Board oversees, well, they're not quote unquote supposed to be overseeing, but they do. They basically make sure that it's running correctly behind the scenes, the bond market here in the United States. So this happened just last week, did not get hardly any press coverage, mainly because it's one of those things where you go, I think I'm going to change the channel now because this is boring me to death. Stick with me on this. The European bond market is so bad and interest rates have gone up so much that the ECB has taken emergency measures to stabilize it. Emergency measures to stabilize it. Now the problem is that that's the European bond market, but unfortunately our bond market is so interconnected globally with the bond market in Europe that we have to be taking emergency measures. You would be hard pressed to find this anywhere in the financial media. Hard pressed, but it's going on, and it reminds me about the financial crisis during 2008, when behind the scenes the financial structure of the United States was crumbling. And I'll never forget this, because I was sitting in my office at my desk watching the markets, as I do often, and the market was just falling. It was in free fall, and I thought to myself, I wonder what's going on, because nothing's in the news. And then the politicians passed a bailout plan and the market rebounded. But come to find out, during that period, we were about to lose the financial system. So there's a lot of risk in interest rates, which comes back home to affect things like mortgage rates, car rates, credit cards, you name it. We got a lot of debt, almost $31 trillion worth of debt. So back to the real estate markets. I don't think that we're going to all of a sudden wake up and see real estate prices down 30-40%. But I think what we will see is a lot of inactivity. A lot of inactivity on the side of sellers. They're still going to try to sell their homes, but hey, Zillow says it's worth, $1 million, and someone's going to pay $1 million for me because we're in a hot real estate market. Well, you're in a real estate market that's cooling off, starting to see it come undone. So I don't think we're going to see a crash in prices. I think we might see a low decline in prices, with still some of these homes being sold, but I think it'll get really stagnant and put a little bit of a break to this hot real estate market. So it may come down to who blinks first, the buyer or the seller. The seller starts coming down on their prices. We're seeing it in the real estate statistics already. But it comes down to one relationship, and that is the relationship of mortgage rates, interest rates, to prices of homes. And banks are going to start getting to the point to where they're not as comfortable with writing mortgages, and might get a little stricter with mortgages. So it really does come down to these higher mortgage rates, which are not that high. They're still way below historically where they have been in the past. But still, it doesn't matter about the past, it matters about the here and now. And to support higher prices, you got to have lower cost of interest, right? So I think that's what we're going to see. And it could be that if you're looking to buy a house and you're waiting to buy a house, that waiting may pay off, because it might be that right house, the seller just finally says, you know what, I'm going to sell it at this lower price because that is all I can get. I don't know when that's going to happen, but I think we're heading towards that part, and it'll start to reset the real estate prices. So we are in a bear market now. What? That's what I'm going to be focusing on Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday of this week during my webinar. I'm doing it the same webinar 3 days in a row, 30 minutes On the 22nd, I'm doing it. That's Wednesday. I'm doing it at 10 a.m. On the 23rd, that's Thursday. I'm doing it at 11 a.m. And on Friday, the 24th, I'm doing it at 12 a.m. or 12 noon. Excuse me, not 12 a.m. 12 noon. And going to be talking really about how all this works with the bear market, what it looks like, the one investment that has consistently made money in the bear market that you probably would never have known about. And number 3, what do you do? Because it comes down, take out all the noise, all of the noise. Let's simplify this. It comes down to one question, one answer. The one question is, how much risk am I taking? And then the answer is this. And then it comes down to, am I at peace with this? 2 questions. So how about that? Am I at peace with the amount of risk I'm taking? That's what I'm going to be focusing on. And every investor has got to be answering. This isn't about timing the market. This is about adjusting your portfolio or changing strategies to where you will be at peace with your investments. You can sign up at prudentmoney.com and we'll get you taken care of. This is Bob Brooks. You got a question for me? Please go to the website at prudentmoney.com and send it in, because we are all out of time. Until we do meet again next time, keep the faith and have a great rest of the day.
That's all the time we have for today. Questions or comments for Bob, or to find out more great information like what you've just heard, visit www.prudentmoney.com. Be sure to join Bob Brooks again for the next edition of Prudent Money.